All right, so thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Quick reminder, we are recording this, and if you can please keep your mics muted for the duration of talk, we greatly appreciate it. So welcome everyone to today's virtual event. We're so pleased to be joined by our latest Tributaries artist, Morgan Asoyuf, for a virtual reception and artist talk. My name is Maureen Smith. I'm the museum's collections and exhibitions manager, and I'm also joined by Alana Stewart, who is the museum's development and communications coordinator, who will be facilitating the Zoom side of things. So to start the program today, let me first tell you a little bit about our Tributaries exhibition series. Derived from the Metal Museum's location along the Mississippi River, the Tributaries exhibition series features artists whose work is beginning to have a significant impact on the metal arts community. Morgan Asoyuf is our latest Tributaries artist, as I said, and we are so very pleased to bring Morgan's body of work to the museum as part of her exhibit, Tributaries Morgan Asoyuf Royal Portrait, which has been on view at the museum since July 24th. We're very fortunate to have Morgan here with us today on the last day of her exhibit to talk a little bit about her work. But before I introduce Morgan, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. A huge support, sponsors and supporters. So a huge thanks to Beth Carter and the staff at the Bill Reed Gallery of Northwest Coast Art in Vancouver. They worked very closely with us and Morgan in order to make this exhibition happen, and we are eternally grateful for that. The Metal Museum also receives exhibition and programming support through the Wingate Foundation and Hyde Family Foundation, and operating support through Arts Memphis and the Tennessee Arts Commission. So thank you to all of those groups for their continued support. And now to introduce Morgan herself, the reason why you're all here today. Morgan Asoyuf, née Green, is a Ts'msyen Eagle Clan artist from Ksyeen River, which is in the Prince Rupert area of British Columbia, Canada. Asoyuf received a certificate of fashion design from the Blanche Macdonald Center before apprenticing under wood sculptors Henry Green and Phil Gray. Since 2007, Asoyuf has been studying design and carving under wood sculptor Richard Adkins. Asoyuf went on to study bronze casting at the Crucible, earned diplomas in jewelry design and stone cutting from the Vancouver Metal Arts School, and complete an intensive gem setting program at Revere Academy. Her work has been shown at numerous Pacific Northwest events and institutions, including the Bill Reed Gallery, the Museum of Vancouver, the Steinbruick Native Gallery, and the Vancouver Pride Art Walk. So for those of you who have joined us today, please feel free to put any questions you have for Morgan in the chat. We'll be getting to those at the end of today's program. But for now, let me turn it on over to Morgan.
Hi. So yeah, I think you said most of the things about me. I'm primarily a practicing goldsmith and multidisciplinary artist. Obviously, I like to mix mediums together. So I play with mixing goldsmith technique with wood carving technique and inlay. And then I also use fashion design because that was kind of one of my first loves. So I want to see that whole picture. And so it's sort of been a long-term goals in my career have been to do the things that I'm doing now. And I'm just sort of continuing along that path and expanding on it. A lot of times the projects that I start, I think it's going to be a year or 2 years, but it's 10 years later and I'm still, exploring those ideas. So I've realized I just really have to decide what I want to be doing and be sort of committed it's going to, no, Isabel, no. That's going to be my path for a while. So to be sure of what I want to be doing when I get started on my projects. I've been goldsmithing for a surprising amount of time now and doing art. And yeah, it's interesting to see where it's developing to at this stage. So I have some videos to share with you. And then we're going to do some question and answers about really whatever, technical stuff, inspirational stuff. I think I also had some questions under my post on Instagram, which I can answer as well, which was sort of about my inspirations for things. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to watch a little video and maybe 1 or 2 more short ones after that. And then we can do some questions. Okay, so is that showing up properly? Okay. So I here, hold on, let's see if I can make this all the way. I may skip through a little bit of this video because I made it longer and then I have a few shorter videos afterwards, but. So as Maureen was saying, I'm Ts'msyen from the Ksyeen River. Here, I'll just pause this here so you can sort of see. I know that probably a lot of people are possibly American who are watching. So this is northwest coast of BC. And Isabel, you can't bug me right now, please. And this is northern BC. So if you go up, way up towards Alaska on the coast, these are sort of like, this is Ts'msyen territory here. And then if you go across from us on the islands, there's Haida people and Kwakiutl people. They call them Kwakwakiwa. The Kwakiutl is sort of an old way of saying. Yeah, so we're way up there, ocean going people, river people. My specific clan is from the actual river. So we're partway up the river is our Eagle territory. And this is just a quick picture too of the Ksyeen, my most favorite place. And I was just gonna show a little bit of like cultural stuff. So I don't know how many people are familiar with sort of like our feast culture, but it revolves around gifting and around artworks being statements of law. So when we make these pieces, it's not just to make pretty things for the wall, it's also to like sort of uphold our law, which includes our young people, our activists. And some of you have seen the show, so you've seen some of these photos. This is Lorelei Williams, who does Butterflies in Spirit, which is a MMIW dance group. And these are some other friends of mine who are also activists and do amazing work within land defense. So part of the purpose of this whole show was sort of to show what, you know, what we consider as royalty is how hard you work to protect your land, your people. And this is just a little like welcoming song. So just like the art form is law, so is the songs. So are the songs. We hold songs and art form as part of spoken law and visual law. And then I'm just gonna get in. I could go on forever about the law aspect of it. So like say what people would call totem poles now. We would have ones for death. We would have ones for land ownership, all sorts of things like that. So if you've been to the physical show, then you've seen some of the writing on that was on the walls. Just talking about how like, you know, when the governments came and took all of our art form away and confiscated it, they were also taking our documents of like land ownership. So it's remaking these pieces is really meaningful. As for goldsmithing, obviously I do a lot of hand building. So I just wanted to show sort of what it looks like to start to hand build some of these smaller items. This was a set of earrings, Muslim earrings, and it's hand engraved. And then I built everything and it's all different like levels. And so you can see just like the amount of soldering, even for like a small pair of earrings is quite a lot. Kind of one of my specialties really is like mixing all different metals, gem setting, engraving, you know, and having them all sort of like combined together in a way that looks effortless. So these are all hollow inside these little pyramids that I built. This is also one of the pieces that's in the physical show. It's a bracelet that really gave me a lot of trouble. I don't know how many goldsmiths are on here, but if you do hinged bracelets, especially when you're learning with that, it can be really challenging. So this one is hinged, and then it's also has square wire around the top and bottom, which just gives it a nice like frame around it. And then it also has a frame on the top. with the different gem settings you can see there. So previous to having to solder the crowns themselves, this was definitely a bigger piece that I had soldered. It was very hot. It took a long time to get it heated up. This is the clasp mechanism for the bracelet, which I had to redo 3 different times because it just kept not quite, it just wasn't quite moving correctly. But I did finally figure it out. The hinge and the other part itself is made of white gold, which helps it to be really tough. Here's me fixing it because I actually took out a little bit too much metal there when I went to make the space to fit the clasp and hinge in. So here you can see it's finally it's finally in there and it's moving properly. This is the sound that you want to hear though. When it finally just clicks right. So I ended up doing just a nice little abalone inlay, and that's the part that you push on to open the clasp. And this little chain on the bottom just prevents it from sort of like swinging open too far. You don't want to open it on your wrist and have the whole bracelet fall off, right? So you can see again sort of the use of all my different skill sets: engraving, inlay, abalone inlay, goldsmith, which is more of like the building. This is a different ring that I did as a commission. It was also in the show. The inlay in this is black pearl in the eye, and then there's a gold sun in the mouth. The inlay is actually very carefully folded over with like a very fine setting. It was a wedding set together with this piece. This bear ring is also in the show as well. I think, oh, I don't know if it traveled this time down, but it's another hollow built ring. Obviously, sort of one of the things I did a lot of, especially when I was first coming out of goldsmith school, was these hollow built rings. It's a really good way to practice hollow building. So like basically building forms with multiple structures inside to support them, and then they're hollow on the inside. So even if you have a huge pendant or a huge piece, like it's going to be quite light to wear. This is a copper ring that's just engraved. It's more building. This is one of my earliest rings out of goldsmith school. And this piece I actually have a lot more process on, so I should, yeah, here we go. So this was actually a hair pick in the sort of like the belly pock style. And you can move it so that you can wear it in different ways. And it was somewhat crescent moon inspired. It's just a little shot of my tools there and sort of starting to carve out that face in a Northwest Coast style. And the detail that goes into cutouts, because I have to sand inside. I hate leaving things rough. There, he's looking quite nice. He's ready for the gems to be set, to be attached onto the base there. So you can see on the base here, what I used to attach it was a set of just two hammered pegs. So I put it through and then I carefully hammer the other side down. There we go, you can see it there. Because you can't really solder with something like the base is made of steer horn, so you can't solder with organic materials on there anymore. And here I'm putting the hinge into this one. So yeah, ideally, if your hinges should be like that, they shouldn't be floppy. They should have a little bit of a slowness to them, because with wear and tear, they are going to get looser as well. And then this is just sort of some of the, just when I was just trying to figure out what was going to even go together on this, I sort of tend to have a lot of materials, and then I'm sort of laying them out and playing with them and trying to decide, like, I originally wasn't even going to do necessarily the 3 necklaces. But once I started the first necklace, I realized that I had to do 3. So this is the biggest piece on the trade bead mantle with all the blue trade beads. So just on this one little piece, this is the back piece. On each of these one little piece, I have to solder every single, attachment on to attach the chains. And that's just a closer shot of some of them. So here you can see I've got all the chains soldered on. All of the salmon bone pieces are like individually made and then attached as well on a chain with the trade bead. So trade beads are like, these are 1800s Russian blue trade beads. They were really popular with Northwest Coast people when Europeans came to trade. We really loved the colors and stuff. And so we traded a lot for them and they were pretty prized for us. And we still like them. And they go very nicely with the blue sapphires. So I had blue sapphires that were pavé set around the edge of that. And then here you can see it in one of the photos. This is CM Hamilton. They're a land defender who does just like a ton of work around all sorts of activism work. That's really awesome. So yeah, just like sort of empowering the voices of our own people who are what I would consider royalty because of those works that they do and the recognition that they deserve for that. This is just some process on the mouse woman crown. So basically I had to, they were all separate pieces to start and I sort of started piecing them together in sections. And that was the only way that I could think to get them soldered on because you have to be able to hold things in place. So within the sections, I was able to solder like 3-piece together, hold it together. Okay, now I'm gonna solder it as a section onto the piece. And I used kind of a funny technique for this. It's not one I use very often because it's quite messy, but basically because of the way that it was built, I wasn't able to get solder to stay in the right place when I went to solder the crown, the bar of the crown with the pieces. So I had to use a different technique where you heat all the metal and then you just basically just use a long piece of solder and you just have to it has to be hot enough that when you touch the metal, the solder runs. So it's tricky. And if it's not hot enough, it just kind of clumps and stuff. So it's not like a technique that I use very often, but I'm glad I knew it because I'd ended up working for this piece. It's kind of an emergency technique. So here you can see all the different sort of sections that are sort of mostly together. Some of them still need some more gem settings on them. And then as I went, I just section by section by section, and I had to number them all. The stuff you see on there is like a resist that I use that helps the other solder not to run. But I do work in only hard solder, so that also helps for it not to run around on you. So here's just some video of the display at the Bill Reid Gallery when it was up, and sort of the finished piece. And I also had pavé diamonds put on that, and it's prehnite and green amethyst, which I go for color a lot of the time. I just really like the colors of those. I thought they went well. And then finding matched stones was kind of hard for some of these too, because there's so many of them. This was, interestingly, that pearl necklace was the first one that I had done ever. So just sort of a close-up on some of the engraving with the mouse woman designs and the gem setting with the pavé diamonds. And then this crown is, the other crown is sort of oxidized, and it has the bear claws, and I don't believe the otter fur traveled down just because of the border, but this is sort of how it started out. It was just this idea, and it was sort of based on these ideas of the shaman's crowns that they used to wear, but mixed with some other ideas that I had in terms of like the bentwood boxes. So basically these pieces are actually very much designed in the way that we design our bentwood boxes on the sides, which were our big carved wood boxes that we would use for keeping special items or even just for packing things around. So I always make paper models first, and then I get to start figuring out how to piece things together. So this is just all the pieces that sort of went into it. It was quite a lot of work because obviously there's the original carvings are quite thin, and then the cast ones had to be quite a bit thicker to be able to cast them. So I had to grind them all down to get them all into even. So say from like a 3 millimeter casting, it has to go down to like 1 mil. So I was grinding a lot. And then again, I had to piece them together in sections. So it's just supporting it using the brick and then slowly putting more and more sections together as I went. And yeah, and it got hotter and heavier and harder to solder. So this is my mentor, Rick, and me, and we ended up having to get a whole nother torch involved after this. It still wasn't even hot enough. And I thought this video would be so cool, but it's just, it didn't really, it's just very messy looking. So I didn't even end up posting it, but just, you can see all of our pieces of solder that we have like ready to go. We have like easy, extra easy, everything, just, you know, because there was we were so sweaty. It was the middle of summer and we were soldering for a good, like at least an hour. It was awful, but it turned out quite nicely. So the labor of our love here has turned out very nice in the end. And I had to oxidize it in just a giant pot as well, which was funny. I've never oxidized anything that large before. And yeah, so the frontlets, so this frontlet's actually both silver and wood, which is interesting. It's just something that hasn't really been experimented with yet. And I wanted it to look really just like authentically Ts'msyen. And I feel like if you don't really look at it, you almost don't notice the silver around it, but that was kind of the purpose, I guess. So here you can just sort of see how it starts with the wood. So alder is what I used. We usually always historically used alder or maple. Here's one of the historical influences for it that I was inspired by, that I've always had a love for frontlets. They're basically our version of the crown, like they're like the chief's headdress or the matriarch's headdress. And it's sort of the highest form of law and power that you can get in Northwest Coast culture, Northern Northwest Coast. So yeah, it was really interesting. I did 2 frontlets for this show, and I have done 1 frontlet previous to that many years ago. But it was really interesting, you know, the learning curve of doing that. You can see here, so this one, instead of the abalone inlay, I decided to use mother of pearl, which there actually is like a historical precedent for it, although it was really uncommon. There is a few old frontlets that have some mother of pearl, and I thought it was really cool. I thought it would look really nice with the silver. But yeah, you can see how it, you know, it just takes so long with the wood. You have to rough it down and bring it down out of a block, as compared to metal and goldsmithing where you're usually building. So you're going the opposite way. And these are the little cast silver faces in wax. So, so once I carved them in wood, I had them molded, and then I had to thin them all out because there wasn't time to like remold and go through that whole process. So you'll see here, yeah. So I just thin them out with my carving tools and send them in to be cast like that. Yeah, now that they're thinned out, because you don't want big thick ones. It would have been very heavy. The frontlet itself is wearable still. But because I didn't remold, fix it, and remold again at that point, because I didn't have the time, it meant I had to like clean up every one by hand and make sure they're all, you know, formed the same and everything. So here they're getting close. They're pretty cleaned up. Matching them up to make sure they have the same plane on them. And then starting to figure out, you know, how they're going to sit around the frontlet itself. This little Ts'msyen production studio here. And there, oh, when that inlay finally goes in, just perfect. I have to be careful though, because sometimes I stick it in and it can't come out because if it's perfect, it just sticks in. You always put a little bit of glue, but it's what holds it is the pressure. So you can see this is like we're getting on final cleanup here with the wood. And then I also did a silver inlay of a mouse woman onto the belly of the frontlet. And yeah, basically everything custom cut. That's the nice thing with abalone and with mother of pearl and those type of items, shell, wood, you can custom cut it to whatever the form is that you want. Here you can see me soldering it. So you'll see afterwards that the eyes do end up being cut out, but to keep it stable while I'm setting the gems, I have left it a whole piece there, but it will be cut out around the eyes there. And the other thing that goes with with setting shell is that you break them sometimes, but there you can see that I've cut out around the eyes now and I'm going to clean that up. But it kept it nice and stable, so it's not moving around, it's not bending in when I'm trying to set it. So the thing that was interesting about this frontlet, and if you've seen the show, I don't know if you were able to look around the back of the frontlet, but it's got a pretty extensive frame that's pressure fit in that actually holds all of the silver faces around. And those faces are representative both of like your descendants coming after you and also of like the celestial cycles, the moon cycles. And so, of course, you know, I couldn't just leave them plain. I had to put little eye settings on them. So I made all these little eye settings, soldered them on. And those are where there's going to be moonstones set into them. So here my frame's sort of getting there. I've got it. You have to kind of guesstimate because there's things that, like I have to leave those bars in the middle for stability, right? So I can't actually fit it on until everything's finished. So you gotta guesstimate, try and get it really close and then hope that it just fits perfectly on there. So I left these things on for stability, these center bars, and got all the faces soldered on to the frame, which I'll probably use again because I am working on some tiers coming up. So I like the idea. It worked very well to keep it stable and where nothing warped at all, like nothing moved. So I just cut them off at the very end. There it is, with like all the pieces on pretty much. And then I got to start painting, which is my fun time because it's easy for me. I started painting when I was maybe like, I don't know, a kid, when I was like 11 or 12. So that to me is just like, la, ha, ha, it's so fast and fun. Not as finicky as everything else. So here are the eyes for the little frontlet faces. And this frontlet was the last piece to go in the show. So I ended up having to set all the eyes on the same night, which just really sucked. I think it was like 20 sets of them or something. I've never had to set that fast, that many. And the time that it took just matching them up, because the way the gems are cut, the cabochons, like they have like a little bit of a shine on them. So if they're not like matched properly, the eyes look like they're looking different places. So I sit around like making sure that all the little shine parts were matched up properly. But yeah, it turned out nicely. I was very happy with it. Got it finished and into the show. And the frontlets beside it are actually historical frontlets. So this piece is a historical piece. It's just a little behind the scenes. This is the mount maker stuff, which is quite interesting. And then just some of the other pieces that were in the show, which are older pieces of mine. They're hollow built. Hollow building was sort of my primary the primary thing that I was learning with Gerald when I was in Vancouver Metal Art School. So hollow building and soldering gold and silver together, like just sort of like specialty techniques. They'll read gallery since I remember when they first opened. But look, this is, so this is also a custom cut stone behind it. this is the bear drum. You see it in the pictures, and the earrings and the ring and the cuff. Move forward a little bit. All right. So here we're going to see, it's a little bit of the process of what inlay, what the inlay was like on the other frontlet. It was pretty wild because this frontlet had so much inlay. And with inlay, especially if you have multiple pieces that are going to be laying flat together, you really have to just, you have to have it all ready so perfectly that you know that it's going to match and be flat, everything before you put it in. So it's a lot of just testing sort of, but you don't want to make it the pieces loose in there. So you want to fit them in, make sure that they almost fit in, and know that when you push it in the whole way that it's going to be there forever. So this is just sort of me testing. And also when I move my hand there, you can see sort of the levels here on the bottom and the top. When you look at the frontlet itself, you'll think like, oh, that it's just, you don't know that there's that many levels underneath it because it looks so flat. But anywhere that the abalone is going to be different sizes, different thicknesses, different shapes. So you have to accommodate that by carving down deeper in the wood or curving the underneath it, that type of thing, right? So yeah, here, I think this was my final, like this is it, it's in now. And you even do like your final cleanup with the knife, as you can see, after the inlay's actually set in there and glued and stuck. And then you just carefully go over it. So I just had, hold on, let's see if I can figure out how to. I just had another video, hold on, that I wanted to show you. Just give me one sec. So I thought it just might be interesting to show sort of just like a few things that here. So let's just do quickly pull up a few videos for you. And I just want to show you a few of the other things that I do. And things that sort of came out of the show that ended up being more part of my work in the long term. So these are sort of something that ended up being long term in my collection is the salmon bone earrings. So I actually worked with the salmon bones heavily in the show, like almost all of the mantles have them within. We have a lot of stories of about ourselves, about the salmon people, and like giving back to them and ensuring that they return to us each year. So, you know, part of how we do that is by honoring them, right? And then let's show you also this. So these, as you can see, are the same faces that are around the frontlets, but I ended up making them part of my permanent collection. So I have earrings, descendant earrings and pendants that I make out of them. And yeah, just sort of some of the ways how that the show has sort of continued into my work. And one other thing that I will show you. So Maureen was mentioning the Pride Walk, so I thought I'd just show you guys the butterflies, which is basically, it was really fun because I got to do like a large scale installation of my work. And I feel like, you know, when you do goldsmith work, it's totally transferable. Like it can be large or small. And So for this, I was able to make really big versions of some of my smaller ideas, but still the interplay of like light and shadow. It really comes from my experience with hollow building, because that's just, you know, I've always done that. So I always really think a lot about shadow and like depth and what that's going to look like on any scale, really. All right.
We are. Well, excellent. If anybody has any questions for Morgan, please feel free to put them in the chat. We do have a couple, and then Morgan, if you wanted to answer some of the ones you received on Instagram.
Yes, I will. Yeah. Just let me just look, because there's some people that had commented under.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some questions here. So the first question was, curious to know how your journey started in goldsmithing, what role it plays in your life currently, and your biggest inspirations when creating a new piece or collection. That's a lot of questions in one. So my journey in goldsmithing started, so I basically, previous to goldsmithing, I was doing Northwest Coast Art. I had been to fashion design school, and I was going to the Crucible down in Oakland for some bronze casting things. I ended up getting two opportunities. One was to travel to Germany to teach at a children's center. And so I accepted that. And then I also was asked by the Vancouver Metal Arts School if I'd be interested in attending there. And I had also been asked by AI, which is in the States. It's a different Indigenous arts university. Anyways, how it ended up was the place that I was going was the owner of the Metal Art School's hometown in Germany. And it just kind of like ended up coming together really organically. And I was like, oh, this is just like meant to be. So I ended up going to school, and I hadn't been particularly interested in metalworks. My dad's already an engraver and a wood carver, and I've seen lots of people do that really well. What interested me in goldsmithing was the way that Gerald Goldsmith was very interesting to me. It was different from anything I'd seen in Canada. That his methods of hollow building, oxidizing, using gem and color, and using really like a 3D aspect to jewelry was it interested me. It piqued my interest. So that's why I got into it. And then I just decided that I would also go, and I was already apprenticing with Richard Adkins. I was with him for many, many years, but I decided while I'm in goldsmith school, I'm going to go learn engraving after school. So I would go to school, and then I would go to Rick's after, and then I would do engraving. So in those years that I was in school, I really got just like a lot of learning in, and mixing the two together, the engraving and the hollow building, was just a real process that I had to sort of figure out on my own in goldsmith school with the support of my instructor. And then let's see, what else did he ask? What role it plays in my life currently? I do it every day. You know, I do other stuff too. I like to paint. I do a lot of drawing. I do, you know, still regalia stuff and wood carving, but definitely goldsmithing. It's a big part of my life. I just got another bench, which I'm really excited about, because I've been wanting to have an apprentice / employee for quite a long time. So I'm slowly getting the equipment I need to expand my business and have a proper, you know, I have a proper woodworking area now and stuff too. So just keep going. And my inspirations when creating a new piece or collection, like I said, some of my inspirations are really long-term. I think that as artists, like, we play around with ideas in different ways for many years, and sometimes we don't even notice it until we look back at our pieces over the years, and we're like, oh, like this is like a theme that I've been, you know, rolling over for quite a while. And you know, I guess you have these things you want to see, and so you keep working towards that, and you know, rehashing things and creating different versions. So, but other than that, I would say it's community based. Like, I just find things interesting. I like the things that people are doing out there activism wise, and see what I can provide for that. And then also just looking at historical influences. Like, I'm a big history nerd. I always loved history, reading, researching. So, you know, there's a lot of old stories, pictures, books that I like to dig through, and I just find really, some things just hit me. Like when I see it, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, you know. So yeah, I have a particular interest in certain things, and I play around with that. Past and present day artists that are influences. And my process. Well, my process is kind of hard to just say it. I hope I showed it somewhat today. My process is usually like drawing. I draw something and then I make a model of it, and then I start playing around with things and color and form and seeing, you know, what I might like together. But I'm always open like to being organic with it. So if I get partway through something and I'm like, I don't like that stone, I'm going to change it, then I'll do it. You know, I try and make it look the best I think it can look. Past artists, I really like, other than all the unnamed artists that are in our Northwest Coast books, I really have a love for like Alphonse Mucha and the Leak. So yeah, like Art Nouveau, you know, of course everybody loves Art Nouveau. So the flow of it though, it reminds me of Formline, which like Northwest Coast art Formline, it's got this sort of flow to it. So it always, and it's based on nature, which I feel like Northwest Coast art is as well. And any projects that I'm planning on or currently working on. I'm working on a lot of projects right now. I feel like I think it's an artist thing to always feel behind, like always. But so I'm continuing with some of the ideas that I had started that I wasn't able to finish for Royal Portrait as well. So I have some like larger scale pieces, like some staffs, and some tiaras are going to be my next projects, because I really wanted to try and do some like aigrettes and tiaras as well. I sort of like the idea of like potentially turning the human face into like a little frontlet, you know. So yeah, I'm doing stuff, and I'm doing like a community-based project as well on like highlighting Afro-Indigenous voices. So that's slowly moving along as well. We'll see. There's all sorts of stuff coming. And then let's see, there's a question here. Can you elaborate on the concept of image as law? Does it relate to the use of images of First Peoples by Euro-Americans without their consent? So for me, it in terms of like the law aspect of the art form, it's more based on the fact that like our art form is not necessarily just pictures. It can be crests or things that signify certain family ownerships, etc., or clan ownerships. So say like, as I was saying, like a totem pole may have been up. It's not necessarily just because it looks nice there. It may be like, this is our territory that we own and live in, and it wouldn't have gone up without have gone through our legal system. So like everybody would have to sign off on it and agree that this is correct and this is the territory. On top of that, things like our regalia, you can't just, well, pre-contact, you wouldn't just sort of throw things on, like they would have to be put on you, and there would be a legal process around that. So yeah, I hope that if people were able to read some of the panels at the show, it sort of explains like that concept of like that a lot of our art form was documentation. It was just done in a different way than written law. I don't really think what I'm talking about has to relates to the images that were taken by like, I forget what's the guy's name that took all those pictures. I can't remember, but there's lots of them. I think that's just like a whole different issue. Yeah, Curtis. Yes, Edward S. Curtis. So I mean, I think that there's a lot of work to be done still. There's a lot of issues with just a lot of things being taken without consent, and sort of doing that work to like, how do we reconcile that now? Because obviously like we want access to our pieces, and a lot of them are in museums, and you know, we need museums to facilitate that and to be like open to like a more Indigenous perspective a lot of the time. With the papers, I think with pictures, I think it's gonna be hard to like control any of that at this point. But so I think that's why like I've had a real focus too, though, is because for me, like I I'm like, there's no way to go and just get all these things back or just do everything. 1 second, please. Sorry. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there. I don't even know what I was talking about. My daughter's bugging me right now. Oh, so anyways, I prefer to, because I don't myself, I'm not somebody that goes and repatriates things, which some people are doing that work and it's amazing. But I feel like we can create new items and have those be used by community. And so the more of that we can provide, and even just like getting our images put out there the way that we want them to be put out, that's a victory too. So like, I think like whether or not we can't change like all these things that happen, we can work towards creating a new future. And then, oh yeah, the theme of royalty traditionally and the younger activists. Yeah. So I just found there's like this huge disconnect between what like European culture like considers royalty, which is like say the monarchy or like, and it's all built on like the plunder and like colonialism, like, and they're very wealthy off of it, and they're considered to be the royalty. But in our culture, royalty is not defined that way at all. Our culture, royalty, that you're not like a good chief, you're not a royal person with like a good like standing with the community, unless your community is well taken care of, unless you conduct yourself in a good way. And unless you're like out there doing the work to make sure that your like women and children are safe, that people are fed. And so like those things, I think, because we've been so indoctrinated with sort of like European culture and patriarchy, that those ideals of like that being wealthy is to have money and to like to have all the best stuff but not care about what the rest of your community's going on, that just doesn't resonate with me as like a traditional artist. Like I feel like with our art form, especially if we are going to be showing who the people are that are our royalty, that are taking care of everybody, going out and doing the work, then we need it to show that. Like it can't just be on people's walls and only be for, you know, non-Indigenous consumption, which a lot of the time it ends up being. People need to make money, I get it, we have rent and stuff. But yeah, so like I guess with this whole show, like I was like, how do we really just visually start to show that like our people are royalty, and especially our activists, our young people, our two-spirit people who are out here every day doing the work to make sure that our children will continue to eat fish, to be able to make sure that, you know, we still have our rights as Indigenous people, and to go out and fight that our missing women and children are brought back, and that we have some sort of accountability and justice from the government. So yeah, I just really wanted to like highlight some of those people with this show. Sort of, I guess like I've done a solo show before, which was primarily jewelry, but it didn't like, I wanted to try and challenge myself to say some things with this show. Like what do we really need to say from our community that needs to be spoken out loud? And this was it.
And a very sweet comment there from Kim.
Yes.
Well, and speaking of activism, one of the questions I had for you was, Mouse Woman plays such an important role in so many of the pieces in Royal Portrait.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Mouse Woman and her influence on both your art and your activism?
Yes, so Mouse Woman has been sort of a really long-term theme. You know, like I was saying, when I'm researching things, there's always certain things that sort of stick out to me, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting, you know, zoom in. And Mouse Woman's always been that for me. Like when I first started just drawing 2D designs, like formline, one of the things I noticed was there's elements that are in almost every single design. And one of them is Mouse Woman, and one of them is salmon eggs. And so I just found that really interesting, like that is ingrained in almost every single Northwest Coast design. And so I started playing with Mouse Woman and salmon eggs as not like, they would call it a secondary because it's usually inside of things, just hiding little places, and started sort of expanding her into the primary focus. And so Mouse Woman is like the tiniest supernatural being in our sort of pantheon of Northwest Coast beings. And she's the grandmother, she's the oracle, and she's the protector of youth. So she's always, just like in the 2E designs, she's in almost all, maybe not all of our Northwest Coast stories, but a lot of them. She always like, like creeps in, and she likes to sit on the shoulders of youth, and she'll whisper in their ear and tell them how to get out of a bad situation. Like, you know, maybe they're stuck in the underwater world because they took a wrong turn or did something wrong, you know, and she'll talk to them and tell them, like, if you give me a little piece of wool, I'll tell you which way to go out, and don't eat anything here, and don't do this. and so I just like, I love that her role as like the protector of youth is ingrained so heavily through the whole art form. And same with the Salmon. So it's almost like our whole culture. And when you talk about visual law, where it's like our art form is also part of our law and our culture, our feast culture, obviously everything else. But it's almost like we're saying across the board that the protection of children and the Salmon are like, you know, they're intertwined with the entire culture and law. So they should be top tier priority, in my opinion. And yeah, so I have recently published the Mouse Woman Rights of Children book. So it's based on the UN Convention on Children's Rights, and it's featuring Mouse Woman. And basically, like, the idea is that children need to learn their own rights so that they know if there's an abuse situation, or it's abuse prevention, basically, and empowerment, so that the children know themselves. And then, hold on, I'll screen share because I actually have a little, I can just show you. Boop. Share. And okay, so here I have a puppet that goes with it. Hello, Mouse Woman, and learning my rights with Mouse Woman. And so I actually, you know, made her the main character here. And yeah, so that's just another project that I've been working on. And I've had a few other book publications, and we're hoping to sort of expand on it. And yeah, I guess it's just working with her for so long. It's like I've sort of gotten to know Mouse Woman really well. Like, I've done a lot of research on her. You can see I've even right now working on a box, and that's a Mouse Woman design on it. And a different one on the other side. So yeah, like, just, I think that she's just been a big theme for me, because myself personally, like, I feel like I feel really strongly about protecting Indigenous women and children and Two-Spirit people. So so that's just, yeah, it's just been a part of my work.
Oh, that's great. One of the other questions we had was, how do you choose what non-metal materials you use in your pieces, and how do you source them? As a history nerd myself, I was particularly interested in the trade beads. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
So I will source things from hey, don't eat my plant. My dog tried to eat my plant. So I will source things from all over the place. Sometimes things are really hard to find. Like the trade beads were really difficult to find. I found some on the internet. I traded for some. I had to ask around and see, you know, who had any and if I could purchase them. So the trade beads came from all over. They were quite difficult to get and quite expensive. They were called Russian blues. They were actually made in the Czech. And then traded to Russia, and then from there traded again, and then came over to us eventually. And yeah, we used to trade all sorts of things for them, furs, foods. We really liked them. We like to put things on. And so a lot of Northwest Coast people sort of have these like old collections of them. And even though they have this very like colonial history, we have a problem for them. They're shiny. They don't make them anymore. The cobalt, it was dangerous to work with. So it was sort of like a limited time when they were making those colors and stuff. These ones, so they're glass. They actually would make them in like sort of a tube, and then they'd break them off. And that's how you can tell the fake ones, as if the ends look too nice. If they look like they're a piece of glass that's been broken off, then you know they're real trade beads. As for the other materials, like obviously like there's all sorts of different gem and rock places. So you just have to search around, see what you can find. I go for color and like what it looks like. It doesn't matter that much to me. Like if it can be more expensive or less expensive, it's just what works for that project. The woods are hand collected. So we go and chop a tree down or just take pieces of a tree or like, yeah. Some of the smaller woods, like the ebony, I was able to purchase at just an exotic woods place. Yeah, I don't know, other materials, shells and abalone, you just have to look around for it again. Like I found some on the internet, I found some at a local craft store. Recently I ordered some whole abalone shells from China, which I'm like gonna try and cut up. We'll just see how it goes. And yeah, you have to custom cut them and stuff. It's just one of those things. You gotta be, I'm always digging around. My studio is very full. My studio is very full of supplies and I'm always collecting and trading for things.
Did anybody else have any other questions they'd like to add? Please feel free to either type it, or if you would like to unmute yourself and ask Morgan personally, please feel empowered to do so.
Yes, that's fine. And also, yeah, like if I'm on Instagram, you guys can still ask questions.
Yeah, and actually, we will drop the links in the chat once more to Morgan's site, where you can access her socials and see what she's going to be up to next. We've got a link to the Bill Reed Gallery so you can see what they're doing. Excellent, thank you, Alana. And yeah, is there anything else that you want to talk about or plug before we all peter out? And please, if anybody has any questions last minute, go for it.
Nope, not really. Don't give me a follow on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I'm slowly redeveloping my website. And yeah, so hopefully when I'll be able to re-release my website by Christmas, and then I'll be plugging that. But for right now, just, yeah, come follow me on Instagram. That's where I'll be posting things. So
excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us, and a special thanks to Morgan for sharing her time and talent with us. I also want to extend our heartfelt gratitude once more to our donors, our members, everybody who supports us and helps make free programming like this possible. If you'd like to support our programming or join as a member today, there are links in the chat for that as well. So yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Morgan, it's been a real pleasure to see your work and hear more about it.
Thanks so much.
And everyone who's local, or even if you're not local, we hope to see you at the museum soon.
Yes, go see the show before it's finished. That's what I plug.
Yes, well, take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.